Sorry. Am I audible, guys? Hanji, good morning, everybody. Okay, right. So I'm audible, right? So begin the session. Okay. So there are certain very important news that we have on our front page today. The most important one being, it is being said by the Tamil Nadu governor that if governor withholds nod, it means the bill is dead. So here what they are talking about is, basically they are talking about the veto power of the governor. They are saying if governor has withhold the assent to the bill, what does it imply? It basically implies the bill has now become officially dead. But they say that whether what words shall we use in particularly this context. अगर हम बात करें, ज्यादा अच्छा वर्ड विदहोल्ड लगता है rather than reject the bill. So this is a particular statement that has come from the Tamil Nadu governor, and our perspective, from our perspective, the most important thing that we have to understand is this particularly is related to Article 200, where there is given related to the veto power of the governor. It is related to the veto power of the governor, that is Article 200, right? So this is the basic news that they have tried to tell us, that if governor withholds nod, that means bill is now dead, right? Okay. The second important news that we have here is, that is very important because it has certain concepts of certain act that are very important to understand. Online platforms must take down PIB flagged fake news, very important. अब देखिए, जो हमारे आईटी रूल्स है ना, उसके अंदर कुछ चेंजेस करे गए हैं. देयर हैव बीन सर्टेन चेंजेस दैट हैव बीन मेड टू द आईटी रूल्स. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, आई वांट टू टेल यू द प्रीवियस रूल व्हाट इट वाज. बेसिकली द इंपॉर्टेंट सेक्शन दैट वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इन दिस कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ आईटी एक्ट इज द सेक्शन 79 ऑफ द आईटी एक्ट. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. आई विल ट्राई टू कवर इट a little bit in detail so that you are able to understand. The important thing that they are discussing over here is the section 79 of the IT Act. अब मान लीजिए we have certain intermediaries like Facebook, we have certain intermediaries like WhatsApp, right? So if a third party or a third party user did post something on, let's say, these particular platforms, and मान लीजिए उससे किसी को aggrievement आ रही है, right? It is not good for the overall society. So that particular intermediary, like the host, where that particular content is being posted, would not be, let's say, उसको क्या मिलती थी, उसके लिए उसको लीगल इम्यूनिटी मिलती थी अंडर द सेक्शन 79 ऑफ द आईटी एक्ट. दैट मींस he was not the person that would be, let's say, accountable for any third party user who has posted anything on that particular content or the website of the intermediary. This particular principle under this section 79 was known as the safe harbor principle. Now this thing is very important to understand. इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? हम इसको बोलते हैं safe harbor principle. Now try to understand this. The government has brought in certain changes to the IT rules. Let's say new IT rules of 2023, what they try to say. They say that whether any information that is being posted online, let's say कोई भी न्यूज है, उसको कैसे डिटरमाइन किया जाएगा that is a real news or a fake news. That would be done by the agency of the center. उसको कौन करेगा? That would be done by the agency of the center, and that agency probably would be press information bureau. अब वो प्रेस इंफॉर्मेशन होगी, ब्यूरो होगा, जो बताएगा कि एक्चुअली में न्यूज रियल है कि फेक है. If the news is fake, then it becomes, let's say, applicable to the intermediary on which particular, let's say, certain content was being posted to take down that particular news. भाई उसको अपने वो जो particular news है, let's say posted on WhatsApp, on Facebook, it has to take down that particular news. If the particular news is not being taken down by that particular intermediary, अगर उस इंटरमीडियरी ने उस न्यूज को अपने वेबसाइट पे कंटिन्यू रखा या अपने प्लेटफॉर्म पे कंटिन्यू रखा, then he would not be guaranteed the legal immunity that was given to him earlier under section 79 of the IT Act. This is a particular thing that has been told in the new rules कि वहां पे safe harbor principle imply नहीं करेगा, that is being given under the section 79 of the IT Act. Now let's try to Consider it through an example. Let's say I post something online, let's say on WhatsApp, right, or on Facebook, that is being labeled by Press Information Bureau as fake. If Facebook doesn't take down that particular content, then he will not be having a legal immunity. If any aggrieved party can, let's say, now claim that that particular intermediary, let's say the Facebook, is also an, let's say, उसके अंदर उसको भी accuse करा जा सकता है. So this is a particular thing that we have to understand in this overall context of the new IT rules, where the Press Information Bureau is the authority that would be deciding whether a news is real or fake. Now here are a lot of concerns associated with this particular mandate of Press Information Bureau, because it is an agency of the center. It can, let's say, arbitrarily use that particular power. Let's say if the government doesn't want anything related to, let's say, any comments, any criticism of the government, they would say na that they have to take it down because it is a fake news, because then it would have a certain impact on the freedom of the press, freedom of the social media, and freedom of speech and expression. So these are the news that are the concerns that are there with this newly appointed or the newly made rules under the IT rules of 2023. राइट गाइज, आई होप यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस, राइट. तो ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. ये पूरा जो मामला है, अगर हम बात करें, इट इज रिलेटेड टू सेंसरिंग द फेक न्यूज. किसके रिलेटेड है? इट इज रिलेटेड टू सेंसरिंग द फेक न्यूज. एज यू कैन रीड हियर एज वेल, सेंटर अमेंड्स IT law. Intermediaries cannot bank on section 79, which now gives them the immunity for content put up by the users. They have to remove anti-government post once PIB sends out the alert. अगर एक बार PIB ने बोल दिया तो उसके बाद उनको वो मैटर अपने उधर से निकालना पड़ेगा. अगर वो नहीं निकालते, then they would not be getting the legal immunity and they could be dragged down to the courts that why they haven't taken down the matter once they were given an alert by the Press Information Bureau, right? So this was the second most important news for the today. Now the third important news that we have to discuss is pause not pivot, says Das, that is the RBI Governor Shaktikant Das, and it holds policy rate at 6.5%. Whenever such news comes, I told you yesterday as well that there gonna be announcement of monetary policy by the Monetary Policy Committee, that is a 6-member committee, and they have kept the policy rate. And what is the policy rate? Policy rate is the repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which the RBI lends to the commercial banks for a short-term periods. In this particular context, in the context of the inflation in the markets, in the global market, the Russia-Ukraine war, the uncertainties in the global market, RBI governor has said that they would keep the interest rates unchanged, that too at the rate of 6.5%. And along with this, they have kept the standing deposit facility to be at 6.25% and marginal standing facility to be at 6.75%. Now these three rates, standing deposit facility, repo rate and MSF, they come under the policy corridor. तो policy corridor कहां से जा रहा है? 6.25 से 6.75 तक जा रहा है. So these are the important things that we have to understand. There was also one word that was being used by the RBI governor yesterday in his speech, that he said that most of the members voted for withdrawal of accommodation. Withdrawal of accommodation stance. Now this was a very important thing that was being highlighted by the RBI governor, that was withdrawal of accommodation stance. Now what that it means? अकोमोडेशन का मतलब होता है कि जब ना मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी में लेट्स से देयर आर लॉट ऑफ लेट्स से इंटरेस्ट रेट्स काफी कम होते हैं एंड देयर इज लॉट ऑफ लिक्विडिटी इन द मार्केट, and whenever there is a liquidity in the market, it can basically result in inflation. That has been the case. So in this particular moment, they are trying to slosh down, that is they are trying to make sure they reduce the liquidity. How can they reduce the liquidity? By increasing the interest rates, and what they have definitely done, that they have kept the interest rates at 6.5%, that is the repo रेट. ना इसको कम किया है ना ही बढ़ाया है, बट वो मेक श्योर कर रहे हैं कि हम हमें अकोमोडेटिव स्टांस से हमें विड्रॉ करना है एंड वी हैव टू रिड्यूस द लिक्विडिटी इन द मार्केट बिकॉज समहाउ इट इज गेनिंग और लेट्स से basically resulting in the inflation in the market. That was a hallmark of the speech that was given yesterday by RBI Governor Shaktikant Das, where he highlighted upon the aspects of inflation, where he talked about headline inflation, where he talked about core inflation as well. He talked about that headline inflation is way beyond the mark that has been set up by the central government. And what is that particular mark that has been set by the central government? It is in the range of 2 to 6%. Now these are the three important news that you have to understand, and remember, एज वेल, राइट। तीनों की तीनों क्या है, बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है। चलिए मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट। देखो यहां पे कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, सो वी आर गोना डायरेक्टली मूव टू आवर एडिटोरियल पेज। थोड़ा न्यूज़पेपर में प्रॉब्लम आई है, आई विल ट्राई टू कवर, लेट्स इन द मीन टाइम इट वुड अपीयर ऑन द स्क्रीन। Yes, I told you, Komal, it will, let's say, affect the freedom as well. Yes, that is why there are a lot of concern. There was a lot of concern highlighted when this particular amendment rule was being made, that Press Information Bureau would be given the, let's say, authority to decide whether this particular news is fake or real, right? Okay. Now, this particular editorial is very, very important. Yesterday, there was a news in the front page as well that Supreme Court allowed and said that the government cannot ban the Malayalam 1 channel that was being banned from telecasting, right? So there are two important things that are being discussed in relation to that particular article in this particular editorial. Try to listen to it very carefully. This is very important. Now, one thing we have to understand, there are two matters that are very important over here. One of the matter is, let's say in this case of Malayalam channel, if I talk about this Malayalam channel, it was banned from telecasting, right? We need to know the fact so that we are able to deduce what is being said in the editorial. It was banned from telecasting. By telecasting से ban कर दिया इस particular channel को. Why? Because government was of the view that it was against the national interest and security of the center or the country. And security of the country. Basically, if we takes the history of this particular channel, they had, let's say, telecasted something that was not in concurrence with the views of the government. Basically, they were, let's say, criticizing the government policies. Criticizing the government policies. So, as a result, this whole issue blown out of proportion, right? So the Supreme Court said if anyone is, let's say, criticizing the government policies, they cannot be, let's say, labeled as anti-establishments, right? They cannot be labeled as anti-establishments. So this was one of the reasons that was being given by the Supreme Court in their judgment, that they need to be allowed to re-telecast their channel. So this was one of the matter that was there in this particular matter. Now the second important news that we have to understand is, when the government, let's say, said this whole matter before it went to the Supreme Court was in the Kerala High Court. Now this thing is also very important to understand. This whole matter was in the Kerala High Court, where government, when asked that why they are basically banning this channel, they said that we would be giving you the justification, but not in an open manner, but in a sealed cover. Like you must have noted that this particular news was in very much in news, basically in the case of Adani, when the government was saying that we will try to give our representation or our verification in a sealed cover jurisprudence. Now the Supreme Court has said why this particular casual resort to sealed cover jurisprudence is being taken by the government, because then it has, let's say, a very disadvantage impact on the aggrieved party, because they don't know that why they are basically defending against. So this is the whole matter that has been there in front of the Supreme Court, that they said that the government cannot resort or casual resort to these sealed covers, because it is a basically dent to the aggrieved party who doesn't have, let's say, enough information to prepare a defense against the accusations of the government. So these are the two important matters that have been highlighted by the Supreme Court. One of the matter was, yes, you can criticize the government and you cannot be labeled as anti-establishment. Second thing was the basic, let's say, they gave a lesson to the government that they cannot, let's say, resort to this casual use of these sealed covers in the interest of national security and national interest. And yes, if they have to do so, then there should be a certain, let's say, gist, let's say, overall gist अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट ने क्यों बैन किया है, at least that shall be provided to the aggrieved party. ऐसा नहीं है कि सब कुछ ही आप सील्ड कवर में दे दोगे, सिर्फ कोर्ट्स और जुडिशरी के पास ही होंगे वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स, एंड यू विल नॉट बी गिविंग इट टू द अग्रीव्ड party. So this is the whole matter that has been discussed over here. One of the matter is sealed cover, and second is, yes, you can criticize the government policies, right? Okay, because that is a part of a healthy functioning of the democracy. Yesterday we told you, right, कि प्रेस को अगर आप मौका नहीं दोगे अपने व्यूज को हाईलाइट करने का, तो आपकी जो डेमोक्रेसी है इट इज इन अ ग्रेव डेंजर, एंड यू हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट यू आर गिविंग द फ्रीडम टू द प्रेस. राइट गाइस? ओके. Now this article is not important, written by Shashi Tharoor ji, right? So we can skip this particular editorial. Now this editorial is very important. Bhutan King's India visit sought to enhance cooperation and allay fears. Now let's try to understand this whole Indo-Bhutan matter, right? Now let's say when I talk about Indo-Bhutan, very very important for UPSC aspirants, because this is a question that could be asked in prelims as well. This is a question that could asked in the mains as well, right? Now if I talk about Indo-Bhutan relations, their relations dates back to 1949 Treaty of Friendship. Now this thing we have to understand, that their relationship dates back to 1949 Treaty of Friendship, right? That was being revised in the year 2007. Now if I have to take one relation between India and Bhutan where they have the strongest bond over there, right? किसके ऊपर अगर हम बात करें सबसे ज्यादा स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट बॉन्ड है, तो वो स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट बॉन्ड है बेसिकली इन द फील्ड ऑफ हाइड्रो पावर कॉर्पोरेशन. अग्रीव्ड पार्टी वो होती है, किसी का क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है व्हाट इज एन अग्रीव्ड पार्टी, भाई जिसने बेसिकली जिसको बैन करा है वही अग्रीव्ड है, राइट? ओके. हाइड्रो पावर कॉर्पोरेशन बोन ऑफ, बेसिकली अगर हम बात करें, इट इज द कॉर्नरस्टोन ऑफ आवर रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन इंडिया एंड भूटान. नाउ already there are 4 projects that are being run in the Bhutan related to hydropower. In this new visit of the king of the Bhutan, the 2 projects that are new pending, they were basically told कि इनके ऊपर थोड़ी सी एक्सपीडिशन होनी चाहिए, थोड़ा जल्दी से जल्दी करके इन प्रोजेक्ट्स को क्या करना चाहिए, इंप्लीमेंट करना चाहिए बाय द इंडियन अथॉरिटीज. दैट इज द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ द हाइड्रो पावर along with the already existing 4 power projects that already have. So this is the one important thing that we have to understand, that there is a strong relationship between India and Bhutan in the context of what? In the context of hydropower cooperation. The second most important thing that we have to understand now, in this era of global age, we are, let's say, lot of India's investment, if we talk about, is going towards Bhutan. It can be measured from this particular fact that India is the largest trading partner of the Bhutan. This is the second important news that you have to understand, that India is the largest trading partner of the Bhutan. Now this thing is very important. Recently India and Bhutan had co-developed their satellite and launched it from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. The name of the satellite was India-Bhutan satellite. So this is also very important era of, let's say, cooperation that is basically coming in the field of space technology. Also in the, let's say, emerging field of financial technology, our RuPay cards are being used in, let's say, Bhutan as well. So this is also a very emerging area of cooperation. So there are a lot of areas of cooperation, if I have to tell you guys, between India and Bhutan. Most important being is the hydropower cooperation. Now the matter that has been discussed was the security concerns related to the Doklam area. Now Doklam is basically at the tri-junction of Sikkim, Bhutan and the China. So there were a lot of military, let's say, standoff was there in 2017 when we talk about the Doklam crisis, right? So basically this whole issue got blown out of proportion few days back when Bhutan Prime Minister said that China and Bhutan will resolve this Doklam issue. But one thing they were able to, let's say, Bhutan Prime Minister basically इसने इस statement से it had a lot of impact on Indian authorities. Why? Because India has always thought that this matter would be trilaterally solved. If it has to be solved, that is the border dispute at the Doklam area. So this was the thing that was reiterated by the Bhutan, let's say, king, that said this matter would be trilaterally resolved by India, Bhutan and China. That is the issue related to the Doklam crisis, right guys? तो ये important है ये चीज याद रखनी है कि कौन से इंपॉर्टेंट एरियाज हैं जहां पे हमारी कॉर्पोरेशन है. मैं प्रोजेक्ट्स के नाम भी बता देता हूं जो अभी लॉन्ग डिलेड प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं जिनके बारे में बातचीत करी जा रही है. दैट आर द संकोश एंड पुनत संगचू प्रोजेक्ट्स. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. संकोश एंड पुनत संगचू प्रोजेक्ट्स दैट आर बीइंग टोल्ड दैट दे हैव टू एक्सपीडिएट दीज प्रोसेसेस ऑफ, लेट्स से, हाइड्रो पावर एरिया, राइट? चलिए. Now this whole article is related to, is the Indian Bhutan relationship intact? We have discussed all the valid points. Now representation in India's police forces. Now this article is basically related to the India Justice Report that has been being released by the Tata Trust, that basically talks about the sanction strength of, let's say, certain individuals like SC, ST and women, and their actual strength in the police forces, and they have given the data in the context of all the states. These are the percentage of SC police constables and officers against the reservation quotas, these are ST police constables, and these are the women police constables. And they are saying, despite years of reservations, Karnataka was found to be the only state to meet its SC, ST and other OBCs quotas, with no other state managing to meet all the three of their reservation targets. The only state we could say were able to meet the reservation target, it was the Karnataka. So this is the thing that you can use it in your answers as well, right? अपने answers में कभी आप use कर सकते हो, depending on के reservation की बात करें तो representation किस तरीके से है. चलिए, moving to the next part. Okay. अभी recently ना कुछ let's say there was few months back there was a particular news where a leading public think tank by the name of Center for Policy Research, FCRA license was cancelled by the government of India related to certain taxation matters for the period of 180 days. Now they have, let's say, in the context of Oxfam, right, that is basically working for the food, shelter and education of vulnerable groups in India. Their FCRA license has not been renewed since 2021. इनका FCRA का लाइसेंस रिन्यू नहीं करा है गवर्नमेंट ने, बिकॉज देयर इज अ सर्टेन थिंग दैट हैज बीन alleged into this Oxfam NGO. Basically, why this is basically being said that this Oxfam had diverted some of the funds to CPR, who was basically under the, let's say, overall supervision of the, let's say, this income tax department, where they have found certain anomalies in their income tax returns, right? So this is the whole matter, and where MHA has recommended CBI probe against Oxfam India for FCRA violations. So they have been particularly accused over here that they have also been involved in certain FCRA regulations, right? Violation of certain FCRA regulations, that are the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. ओके तो ये न्यूज पता होनी चाहिए, उससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है. अच्छा, गवर्नमेंट नॉड फॉर स्पेस पॉलिसी, प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स सेट टू गेन. नाउ द गवर्नमेंट हैज कम अप विद द न्यू स्पेस पॉलिसी 2023 दैट सीक्स टू इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज प्राइवेट सेक्टर पार्टिसिपेशन इन द स्पेस सेक्टर, एंड दे हैव बेसिकली डिलिनिएटेड रोल्स. अब इन्होंने ना रोल स्पेसिफिक कर दिए हैं कुछ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के जो स्पेस सेक्टर के अंदर बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, लाइक इसरो, न्यू स्पेस इंडिया लिमिटेड, that is basically responsible for the production of the launch vehicles, that are SSLV and PSLVs, and then we have the InSpace, that is Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, which is basically helping the private sector to, let's say, use the facilities of the ISRO and make sure that private sector has entry into the space sector. Now in this space policy, all these roles of these three institutions have been formalized under the new space policy. इससे ज्यादा इन्होंने इसके अंदर कुछ नहीं बताया, जब बताएंगे तो हम और डिस्कस करेंगे, राइट? तो ये चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये तीन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के बारे में आपको पता होना चाहिए, न्यू स्पेस इंडिया लिमिटेड एंड इन स्पेस. ओके, ये सारी पॉलिटिकल न्यूज है, ठीक है? ओके, लेट द, आज थोड़ा लगता है इंटरनेट स्लो है ना? लेट इट कम एंड वी विल ट्राई टू डिस्कस. ओके, चलिए, यहां पे कुछ इतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, बस एक चीज इंपॉर्टेंट आ रही है, लॉस इन व्हीट प्रोडक्शन इज मिनिमल. अभी आपको पता होगा कि कुछ अनसीजनल, वी कुड से देयर वाज अ रेनफॉल, सो there was a, let's say, a concern that the production of wheat would be hampered, but the government is saying that the loss on wheat production is minimal, says the center. So nothing new over here. And finally we move to the world page. Saudi Arabia, Iran reach agreement on joint plan. Already we know that China has brokered peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, where they have tried to, let's say, they would establish missions in their respective countries and would try to stop the proxy wars that have been going on in the countries like Yemen and Lebanon. So this is a very good news that is coming from West Asia, where the countries that are the major, if we talk about the major powerhouses that are Saudi Arabia and Iran, they are reaching an agreement on the joint plan, and this peace has been brokered by the China. This was in detail, let's say, few months back, 1 month back only. That was very, very important, right? Okay. Now this is related to foreign trade policy, the new foreign trade policy. We have already discussed this new foreign trade policy, so no need to venture again into this. And okay, so finally we are done with the today's analysis, right guys? So there were a lot of important news that came in today's newspaper that were very important. The first of the news was related to the IT rules, government decision withhold, RBI repo rate, then it was the Supreme Court giving a judgment on this press freedom, and there was an Indo-Bhutan relationship, then we had the Oxfam thing, and these were the important things in today's newspaper, right guys? So if anyone has any doubt, you can ask me, otherwise I'm going to end the session and will take your leave, and we will meet each other tomorrow same time at 9 AM, right? If anyone has any doubt, you can ask me. Chaliye, thank you so much guys. We will see you each other tomorrow same time 9 AM. Till then, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.